We are live, Dr.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And welcome everybody to this first lecture of course on real statistics. In this, I will first start by presenting some basics of this course. And, then, as people have been informed, we will actually be discussing the first chapter, introductory. And so I'll be discussing the details in the presentation. All right, so this is the first lecture, but it is actually a preliminary. We are not actually starting the course. These are some ideas which are covered in chapter 0, which is sort of a introductory and experiential chapter. And technically, everyone who is participating is supposed to have read the chapter, but actually I've opened it up for everybody. So there may be many people who have not actually read the first chapter in the audience. But in the future, basically there are 12 chapters in the book, and we will be covering one chapter every 2 weeks. So it will take about 6 months to cover the whole course. And before the first lecture, which will be on 9th October, the first lecture will cover chapter 1. Then we will close the registration for the course. And then subsequent lectures will be open only to registered participants. So we're just going to talk about some procedural details. This is a synchronous course, which means we will be all going through the course together. And we will be covering one chapter every 2 weeks. Later on, I will put this material on self-autopilot, and people can go through it in an asynchronous way at their own pace. But for the moment, this course is going to be everybody together. Dates may be somewhat adjusted, but basically it will be Sundays at 6, like this, to allow for the largest possible range of convenient times for everybody. There are 5 sections in each chapter. We will create 5 discussion groups to answer discussions for each section. We tried to do this on this particular section, but because of shortage of time, this could not be done very effectively. But for later lectures, we will follow this methodology that students will actually read the text, watch the videos, and discuss the assignments. And then when we have the live lecture, it will be mostly interactive. Students will discuss their responses to the material presented in the chapter, and I will guide the discussion. And there is a sheet that I've asked for information. This will be sent to all registered students later. All right, this is the first and last time I will actually teach this course, because I have a lot of other materials to develop and cover. Hopefully, I will be developing this course will only cover very basic statistics. It is meant to be, this course is exactly designed for teachers of introductory statistics. And so I hope that from the graduates of this course, there will be teachers who will be able to both teach this course, which is for a master trainer course, and also teach the basic statistics course itself, which is offered in nearly every department in every university all around the world. So there's a huge amount for demand for this basic statistics course. And I will be trying to be closely engaged with all students. So monitoring their progress and everything, and making sure that everybody is keeping up with the materials. Primarily because I'm working on finalizing the textbook. You will be going through a draft of the textbook, and then from the feedback that I receive, I will polish and finalize and prepare the manuscript for publication. Now, some of the distinctive features of this course is that what do we mean by the title real? This is a meaning. And this meaning is very different from what we are taught in conventional statistics. What I'm saying is that data cannot be analyzed in isolation. If we want to do data analysis, we have to understand where the data comes from, what real world context generated the data. One of my friends, now deceased, David Friedman, used to say that you need to expend shoe leather to learn about causality. That is, you have to go and walk about in the real world in order to learn about causality. You can't do it sitting at desk and analyzing numbers. Exactly the same data set would be analyzed very differently depending on the real world context, which is why you can't analyze data independently of the real world, despite the fact that this is what every statistics textbook teaches. Statistics textbooks teach how to analyze data without actually referring to where the data comes from. Now, this makes things difficult because real world circumstances are unique. Every data set is unique. And so there is no general method which applies to all data sets. So learning real statistics is difficult because you have to do it on a case-by-case basis. And then that means that students have to learn it in an apprentice-like fashion. Okay, I had this data set, I analyzed it, I got this result, and then you take another data set, and little by little, students get the experience so that they can tackle a new data sets on their own. But they will have to learn to think. There is no standard canned package of technique which can be applied. So just to give a very simple example, consider this very trivial data set, 18, 20, 25, 31, 36, 40. These are 6 numbers. What can we do with this data set? Well, we can find the mean and the variance, etc. And suppose somebody says, okay, this is a data set, find what is the next value of this going to be. So forecasting problem. Well, if you look at the data set, you will see that on the average, the changes are around 5 units. So one possible prediction is that the next value will be 45. But you can also see that the changes are going from 6 to 5 to 4 units in the last 3 periods. So if we catch that trend, then we can say, okay, the next one will be only 3 higher. So 43 would be a good way to go. There is also an argument to be made that it could be 44 or 45 or even 46. You can make up an argument for almost any number like this between 43 and even up to maybe 48. So these are all good forecasts without knowing anything about the data. But if this is a question of nominal statistics. In real statistics, we reject the question. We say that this question cannot be asked because we don't analyze data sets. The goal of knowledge is to take a data set and use it to learn about the real world. If the real world is not there, then there's nothing to do. So actually, if you look at the data set, this is the maximum monthly temperature from January to June in Islamabad over, so this is monthly data. So the next value was actually 35 because June is the hottest month and the temperature starts to decline. So you understand that how the real world context completely changes the picture. Previously, the automatic forecasts are just based on looking at the pattern, but the pattern isn't real. The pattern is due to the fact that the first 6 months, the heat is increasing and then but now suppose that this was yearly heights of children measured in some unit, like maybe inches. Then Obviously, the next data set would have next forecast would have some very different implications. And suppose that the readings were reversed, we had 40 first and 36 later, then we would say that must be a recording error because height cannot be declining by 5 inches. So suppose on the other hand that this second data set with 18, 20, 25, 31, 36, 40, and 35 is the number of major fires in Belgium, then we would say, okay, there's something happened to control the fires. The fires had been going up, but now they're going down. So there must have been some successful fire control program launched. So we should go and see what the fire department is doing in Belgium. Suppose these were the annual infant mortality rates, then we would say, okay, this country has had worsening health conditions, but somehow they managed to get things under control in the past year. Maybe they introduced a successful health program. So you understand that this is what real statistics is about. Real statistics cannot be done just by looking at the data. You have to go into the real world, and the goal of real statistics is to learn about the real world, not to learn about the numbers. All right. Some of the major concepts to be covered is that index numbers are arbitrary. I found from experience that this is the hardest concept to get across to students. That rankings of colleges, of students, this is the best student, this is the best college, these are all arbitrary and subjective. This cannot be done objectively. This has radical implications because a lot of the statistics that we do, what is the impact of corruption on development or things like that, these are all based on index numbers. And index numbers are all arbitrary. So basically all the results that we are looking at when we analyze World Bank data sets, these are just subjective and arbitrary and can be changed in any way you like once you understand this arbitrariness. Conventional statistics is a useful descriptive tool. They allow you to look at the data, but you cannot do anything more from the real point of view. Looking at the data is just meant to provide you with clues to what is happening in the real world. So you cannot do inference using data alone. Knowledge is learning about the real world, not about the numbers. So knowledge will be produced by taking those clues in the patterns in the data and following them up by investigating what is happening in the real world which produces these clues. And this is never done in conventional statistics. And so basically conventional statistics cannot produce knowledge according to our conception of real statistics. Just a little while ago, I saw this news item about how Columbia University provided fake data to climb and to make an amazing climb in the rankings. And there have been many such scandals. But the real lesson from this has not been learned. It is not that by fudging the numbers you can rise in the ranking. It's that there is no correct way to do the rankings. This is hard to understand, but we will cover that in the first 2 or 3 lectures. All right, so what is the basic fundamental problem that we are trying to fix? That comes from basically the theory of knowledge, which has been studied in some detail in this first chapter, in this 0th chapter, and we will discuss some more in the next chapter. But this is the philosophy behind the course. The actual course, which will start in the 2nd lecture, about a month from now, we will be just doing data analysis, but data analysis for real data sets, not for fake arbitrary data sets. Because as I said, in real statistics, we cannot analyze data in isolation. So basically, the current foundation of statistics is based on logical positivism. And this logical positivism is a false theory of knowledge. So what we are doing is we are replacing LP by Islamic epistemology. And this provides new realist foundations for the discipline. Now, there is the question that, is this only going to be studied by Muslims? So basically, that's not true, but there are a couple of points which are not well understood or known. Logical positivism is itself a religion. So it's not that you are going from a secular, non-religious basis to a religious basis. Basically, every study, every analysis must be built on some theory of knowledge which is metaphysical. So you can't do without metaphysics, but the only thing is that logical positivism is a toxic metaphysics which is repugnant to human nature. Islamic epistemology is a natural theory of knowledge which is acceptable to all human beings. It is built on rejecting selfish personal goals by bigger visions and the desire to serve humanity by acquiring useful knowledge. So there is nothing in the foundations that will be so strongly Islamic that non-Muslims will find it difficult to accept. But we will be using concepts about the theory of knowledge which are built on Islamic foundations provided by Imam al-Ghazali, who was studied by all European thinkers. So basically, although his key insight was not absorbed or accepted. So basically, we are looking at philosophical foundations, and there is no difficulty for non-Muslims to be studying this course. Okay, so now we're going to be discussing some new concepts and tools, and some of the central concepts are probability. Now, as you may know, or you may have realized, there are two standard definitions. 90% of the textbooks use frequency theory. Now, frequency theory is an absurd definition because it says that, okay, the probability is defined by flipping a coin infinite number of times. So that's ridiculous because it can never be done. Now, when we read this definition, we automatically assume that it means that, okay, infinite number is impossible, but maybe we can do it 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. Now, the problem is that if you use 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times or 1,000,000,000 times, it doesn't work. No finite segment is an approximation to infinity. And people who have analyzed that, okay, let's just take 1,000,000 flips as the basis. It just doesn't work. Then probability doesn't get defined correctly because the probability of a coin coming up exactly 50% heads in 1,000,000 trials is close to zero. So close to zero that it's negligible. So the probability will not be 50%. So every probability is different, and it's different every time you flip the coin. So there is no way to define probability correctly using frequency theory. Bayesian theory is even worse. It says that probability is just your opinion about it. It doesn't have anything to do with the real world. So that the two standard definitions found in nearly all textbooks are wrong. And there is a correct definition which we will study in this course. Similarly, causality is massively mishandled because causality is again a hidden concept about the real world. It is not causality is never in the numbers. It's always in the real world. So that's why it's basically impossible to use nominal statistics, study the numbers alone, and learn about causality. It's just impossible. You have to learn about the real world in order to study causality. That's why there's an infinite debate, huge amount of papers about causality. None of them come to the right answer. Same thing goes for econometrics. All inference depends on assumptions of the regression model which are covered. But in nearly all applications that we do, these assumptions are false. So regression models almost never give useful results. Now, there are a few exceptions in engineering and agriculture. There are physical real-world processes with known technologies and determinants. But in economics, this almost never happens. But we will not be studying econometrics in this course. But this is just to let you know that these things apply. Now, for the course itself, basic Excel skills will be essential. and there are many sources for this. So if you don't know Excel, then I recommend that you learn this within the next month before the chapter 2, because we will be using a lot of Excel and just basic skills, not a big deal to learn. And most people should know that already. All right, so that's the end of this presentation. And one thing that I would like to say, okay, so that's all. Now we are going to go through the, just one second. My screen. All right. So I'm going to the next thing on the agenda. There's a question from Syed. Go ahead and ask. Can he unmute?
Yes, I believe you can unmute. Yes.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Basically, I'm new to this course, and I believe this is the first lecture for statistics.
Yes.
But when I try to enroll through the Nafi website, it is not like I'm not able to log in because they are showing me some password or something error. But I already have account. I don't know
In
why.
this lecture, we will figure these out. There is a you can write to me or go to the MES website. This is actually for the text. Now there is the first agenda. Okay, so we have gone through the chapter 0, and we have divided the 100 or so participants, more than that, about 150 actually, into groups of 20. And we will, in each group has gone through one of the 5 sections, and this will be the general procedure for this course. And then there are 4 questions for discussion in each section. So the first group is, let's see, who is the first group? Do we have the presenters for the first group? Section A. Who is handling section A? Can you raise your hand, please? Saira? Are you can I find this?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, me and Dr. Saud is basically the group leaders of section A, group A.
All right. So Uzma, are you going to present?
Yes, sir. Sir, I will discuss the basic summary of this section, and Dr. Saud will discuss the questions answer.
All right, please go ahead and discuss the summary. I will take a small 5-minute break for Maghrib, and anybody who needs to do so can go away briefly and come back. I will come back very quickly and listen to the discussion and respond. But this is going to go through the Maghrib, so everybody who needs to do so can take a break. But Uzma, go ahead and proceed, because recordings will be made available. Proceed and describe the section, make a section summary, and then discuss the 4 questions, and I will come back and comment on this discussion. All right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Take the leads, Uzma.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Hopefully my screen is visible to everyone. Okay, in this section, Dr. Zaman is basically discussing about his own life experience, that all of you know that he has been trained in the Western education system, and his higher education is from MIT and Stanford. So he basically discussed that how this Western education system has created a secular mindset which lead to meaningless lifestyle. And the conflict that he mainly faced, and also I think all of us also are also going through this, is that does the Quran contain complete and perfect guidance for us today? Or our modern problems can only be solved by the Western knowledge, while the Quran is mostly irrelevant. So, in this section, he's basically trying to answer this question. First of all, he has discussed about his early life experience, from up till 15 years. His father played a very important role in his training, and he has basically discussed three crucial takeaways from the father's training. Like number one, parents' love, faith, play a very important role. It gives children the courage and inspiration for high vision. Secondly, always think by yourself and not be influenced by the thought of the crowd. And the third one is the formal education as a paper chase. The credentials were necessary, but only life experience provides us with real education. So I think all of us must be agree with all 3 points. Maybe for me, the second point might be more, or the third point is more important, and maybe some of you may think that the first point is important. But all 3 points have are very important in the children's training, and we will discuss it later on in the question answer section. Later on, he discussed about his formal education. He basically took his formal education, has basically completed his formal education by the age of 22. He did BS from mathematics from MIT, and his PhD and MS is from Stanford. So basically, MIT taught him about the physics, chemistry, biology, but nothing about how to become a better human being, and nothing about the meaning of life. So that's the dilemma of our education system. That it doesn't taught us about that how we can become a good human being. I also believe that another dilemma of our education system is that the content that we are taught to our students is almost outdated and has no practical relevance. Like for example, nowadays you see that ISLM model that is basically taught us is basically based on the assumption that the money supply is exogenous and is the fixed. But nowadays you see that money supply is no more exogenous. It is basically an endogenous phenomenon. But still we are teaching our students with the same ISLM models. So further we discussed that the central question we all face in our life is how can we make the best possible use of the precious few moments we have been granted on this planet. So the Western environment, informal and experiential education trained us to be basically selfish. We just focus on our own pleasure, profit maximization, power gain without any concern for other society and other persons. So while searching for the truth, he searched through different philosophies of life, through different religions and lifestyles. Later on, through Tabligh, he learned that the faith is a condition of a heart and not of the mind. That is why it cannot be developed by arguments and counter arguments. To believe and trust in God means feeling certainty in your heart that God will take care of you, regardless of how adverse circumstances appear to be. For example, in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically told us about the Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, that facing the Nile in front of him and the army of Fir'aun behind him with no apparent chances of escape. Musa Islam is not worried about anything, unlike his followers. He says that God is with me and he will guide us out of this difficulty. And I believe all of us must have seen this and experience this in our life. Whenever we are in such situation that there is no way to go out, if we just leave it to Allah, then Allah definitely meant the ways and he basically took us out of those situations. I must also quote here my grandfather usually said that it is not the peer who is Kamil. It is basically the Yaqeen that is the Kamil. It is our Yaqeen that basically help us to get out of the situations. So the deep conflict created by the faith is that we believe that Quran provides us the complete and the perfect guidance for all time. Historical record shows that Islamic teachings took mankind from depth of ignorance to pinnacle of wisdom 14 centuries ago. But the Western education taught us that the knowledge created in the West over the past few centuries is the only type of valid and worthwhile knowledge. So all else, including the Quran, is ignorance and superstition. So for the guidance today, we don't need to look at the Quran. We can do and perform well just by following the Western intellectual tradition. So the Western education train us to be to ignore our hearts and just follow our minds, and that they mainly focus on the rational behavior. That we every individual is rational, and they basically work for their own self-interest. So this kind of thinking arose in the West due to destructive warfare between Christian faction, lead Europeans to reject Christianity as a basis for public life. So the trauma of loss of faith led them to reject the herd and intuition as the basis of knowledge. And unfortunately, we are also experiencing this thing even among the Muslim sects. So in contrast, Quran states that, for indeed it is not the eyes that are blinded, but the blinded are the heard. So the Islamic teachings place great emphasis on the heart as a guide to the truth. So my heart basically testifies to God and to the power of the message. So the central question posed by life are not addressed at all by the Western knowledge, while the Quran provides us the complete and the perfect guidance about it. Now I will request Dr. Saud Ahmed to discuss about the question answer session that are given at the end of this session.
Okay, good. Yes, go ahead, Saud. Are you present, Saud? Hello, is Saud there?
Sir,
If not, you can continue and present the question yourself. If Saud is not there, I don't. Let me see him on the screen. Yeah. I don't see Saud on my screen. So why don't you finish the second part as well? Do the answers. Because I don't see Saud. Okay, Uzma? Uzma. Go
yes,
ahead.
sir, I just received a message from Dr. Saud that there is no electricity at his side.
Oh, I see.
So,
Okay, so go ahead and do the questions also. By the are you there, Uzma? Can you share
yes, sir,
the
just 1
screen?
minute. Just one, please, sir.
Okay.
So the first question is about that based on your own life experiences as well as the discussion in the section above, what are the some critical elements of training that one should provide to their children? Choose one among these elements and explain why it is important. So basically in this discussion, three main points are the takeaways that basically Dr. Zaman has talked about from his father's training. In the first is the parents love faith play a very important role and give children the courage and inspiration for high values. And second is always think by yourself and not be influenced by the thought of the crowd. And the third one is the formal education as a paper chase. The credentials were necessary, but only life experience provide us with real education. For me, I think that the second point, that we should always think by ourselves and not be influenced by the thoughts of the crowd. The first one, it is also important that the parents' love and fear does play important role, but I think that besides that, it your own self-awareness also play a very important role. If we should basically taught our children to be self-aware, what they think about the world, how they basically take the thing. It's not a good idea to just follow the world as it is, what the other are doing, and you also just follow that. We should ask from ourselves what we think, what is the right and what is the wrong, and follow our own intuition, and then we should decide that which path or which field we should move on. Secondly, that yes, I totally agree that today's our education system is just to meant a degree, and it is basically not focusing on the character building or the telling us about the truth. Even I just look towards my own educational career. I never think that I get as such. I think before taking any course from Dr. Zaman in my MSc degree, before that, I also never thought in that way that I'm thinking in right now, that what is the purpose of my life and why I'm here. So basically, but not every teacher is like Dr. Zaman, who basically train us to think in this way. So coming towards the second question, the central question we all face is, what is the best possible use we can make of the precious few moments of life we have been granted, and how would you answer this question? Well, I believe that as our life is very limited, and we are here for a very short period of time, and every moment that we are living is very important. So it's very important that we should know what is our goal, why we are here in this world. For me, my life goal and my every moment is like, I believe that I am just here like for ibadat. We are angels are there, and we basically our purpose should be to help the mankind. For me, it's important that whatever whoever is in my circumstances, whoever is in my life, like if I'm a teacher, then my students, my family, my friends, so I should try my best to basically ease their life, to help them in their every aspect. The knowledge provided to ignorant and backward Sudin in the form of Quran launched a revolution which shapes history even today, 14.5 centuries afterward. What was the revolutionary aspect of this knowledge, and does this knowledge continue to be revolutionary even today? Give your answer. Well, this knowledge still has the same power, but I believe that at that time, Hazrat Pak was there to basically teach them. But now at our time, we don't have like in real sense Hazrat Pak. So and are basically our education system is that we are so much influenced by the Western ideology, Western concept, that we think that Quran don't have that power and don't have that um, wisdom that basically help us to get out of these situations. But the problem is that we never try to understand what is the true message of Quran. We Most of us has never tried to basically read Quran with translation to understand what actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want to give of the message. So if we actually try to understand what is the message of the Quran, then definitely it will help us, and it will definitely bring the revolutionary in this world. Like I remember that whenever there's one sentence that is repeatedly said in the Quran, is that I will just say it in Urdu, that क्या आप ये समझते हैं कि बगैर आजमाए ही आपको इनाम दे दिया जाएगा, मगर बगैर आजमाइश के अल्लाह ताला हमें कैसे जन्नत में पहुंचा देंगे, हमें जन्नत कैसे मिल सकती है बगैर आजमाइश के. So it means that this life is basically a test for us. We are not here to enjoy the worldly benefits. We are here for a test and an exam. So for every stage of life, we are facing some tests, and we have to go through those tests. And if we are successful and if we are passed, then definitely we have a very good life hereafter. So have you experienced the conflict between hard truth and the training provided to you by your education? If so, describe one such conflict and write your own thoughts about this conflict. Our education system broadly saying that it yes claim that it will basically bring development, modernity, ease, and prosperity for everyone. We don't no doubt that exploration of scientific knowledge and technological revolution has brought both the benefits as well as destruction for humanity. So it's quite evident now that the greed for profit and capitalization help cultivate and promote a consumerist society devoid of moral values that could achieve higher human objectives. So such a developmental model is no longer sustainable as it brings misery and poverty for the masses and pollution and the natural disaster for the environment. So these conflicts and half-truths compelled me to provide that there is some vital component which is grossly lacking in our education system. Okay. So
All
these
right.
are the basically 4 questions.
Very good. I was going to make some comments, but I think you've done everything just perfectly. So I don't have any particular comments to make. So now I would like to shift this to Maaz and Naveed, who are responsible for the next second. Which one of them is present and who is going to do the presentation? Maaz or Naveed? Maaz, are you going to do the presentation now?
Sir, I think Naveed is going to present his part, that is the summary part, and then I will be presenting the question part.
Fine. Naveed, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Okay. Can you give him the hosting privileges, please? Okay, good.
Sir, the second part of this chapter is regarding the conflicting bodies of the knowledge. So there are one Western knowledge which have encompassed all of the modern age, which revolves around the physical sciences and have ventured to apply the generalization and rules from the physical sciences to apply it in the social sciences. While on the other side, we have the Islamic knowledge, which has a central question of for the purpose of life and the purpose of creation of human being. So there is a deep dilemma between the faith and reason in this scenario. This deep dilemma is regarding the conflict between heart and head. And on one side, there is the intuition which search on the purpose of life, while on the other side, the Western knowledge does not regarding anything unobservable. So Edward Said is the person who wrote Orientalism regarding this deep dilemma between the two theories of knowledge, and he actually propounded this this issue in a sense that the knowledge being created by the West is for a purpose to serve the powers. So the role of power in shaping the knowledge has been vividly stated by Edward Said, and he was the one who inspired our teacher, Dr. Asad Zaman Sahib. So there is a need to take small steps to reject this falsified and erroneous basis of knowledge. And Paul Baruch has very clearly depicted in his book Economics and World History that how these falsified theories have been developed to serve the interest of certain nations which were in power in those times, and how certain other powers who contested a dear share of the power, and they in the shape of theory of infant industry, how they infant economies, how they contested for dear share. So this black face of Western knowledge has come to form and shape the modern knowledge of statistics, and we are going to wash out those black things from the knowledge of the statistic. Over to you, Mas Javed.
Thank you, Nafi. Shall I share my screen, or can we just continue with yours?
It's okay, you can continue.
Okay, if you can you just please make it bigger if possible? I think it would be helpful for the
slideshow mode. And
yeah. Thank you. As Nabit has just summarized the section B, at the end of the section there are some questions posed, and one of these questions was revolving around whether the education we receive today from the Western source of knowledge, whether it is helpful for us in our to betterment of our lives today, and if yes or no, so what are the arguments from our side? So actually, I am going to just summarize here the arguments that our group has posed. So one of these arguments is that the formal education that is being actually we have earned many years and invested many years in just getting this education from our formal education system. And all of these was around the physical sciences, like what is being done or what is revolving around us and how the world is being working around us, like physical science, like physics, chemistry, etc. But the actual question is being posed here is that what it has to do or whether it answers the other type of questions that comes with from our heart, like what is the purpose of our life? What is our objective of life? So there is a kind of a dichotomy there. So I think screen is not being shared now.
yes, do you have co-host now? Do you have a screen share button on your computer?
Yeah.
Okay, then you can take it over and share your own screen.
All right. So I hope it is visible.
Yes.
Okay, so actually there is a kind of dichotomy there. So for me, like we can say that there is so different questions that are being posed and different kind of answers are being given to us. So some of the questions that are being posed, like mostly from our mind, that what are being or how the world is being working around us, what is the rules of the nature under which these world is or what natural phenomena is going to work. So these kind of questions are being posed and answers are being given through Western knowledge. But the actual questions that are being raised in our heart, like the objectives and objective of life, how can we spend our life and how can we spend like better life, just not for ourselves, but for others also. So I think it is a kind of a rule that this Islam, the religion of Islam, is just or is given to us on our own nature. For instance, if we want betterment for our lives, then we should think better for others also. So this is the kind of we can say a good answer that only Islam gives us, and it also attracts to our heart. But these kind of teachings, we have never heard about these kind of teachings from the Western source of knowledge. So there is a huge gap, and this blank space between these two extremes, I think, can only be fixed, can only be filled up when we're going to implement this Islamic knowledge that we have maybe in our books today only. And so we have to implement and absorb this knowledge and implement it in our lives so that we can maybe like the revolution happened 1400 years ago. So maybe that revolution just can happen now with that same knowledge. But there is I think, need to absorb that knowledge from our hearts and to be able to and to be consistent to take more steps towards achieving that knowledge and to answering these questions so that these gap can be filled up and we can come up with the new answers that are being posed in our hearts and minds. So maybe this is the one question. So, sir, do you want me to go through all of the questions and
Yes,
answers
but
once? Or?
go through all of them, but do so quickly because we have
Okay,
lots
okay.
of sections to cover. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the second question posed was about the biasness in Western thought about the East. So it is asked to give two kind of examples that how the Western thought gives Western thoughts are biased towards the East. So one of the thought that came to us is about Islamophobia, like if any extremist event happens from any man or any person who is Muslim, then this whole religion is being like we are going to, or Western people are going to say that this is whole phenomenon is going to be emerged due to Islamization, or this religion of Islam is being the culprit of this extremist thing. But when this, like 2 weeks ago, persons in Canada, like when the extremist event happens in their country, they are just going to say that there is a kind of psychological issues with those specific person. They have nothing to do with the religion. So this is the one kind of biasness that is there in Western thought. So similarly, another kind of biasness is about the free trade that most of you have already read, I think, in the writings of Dr. Asad. So similarly, there is another kind of biasness in the Eastern authors due to the influenced by the Western teachings. And one of these example can be like in our local think tanks, we only make policies for the government that implement to our people. Those are just not beneficial for us. And because we are just influenced by them, so we are just going to blindly implement those policies and just don't think that whether they are going to be beneficial or not. So I think that can be, so they just keep writing many reports there, and they just proposing these different solutions, but I don't think that they are going to be benefiting the society as a whole. Similarly, another example could be the Islamic economics, where they are just going to take the conventional economics and they are just going to put some factors like zakat and some other sources of Islam into that specific Western economics. So the whole economic system that is based on the fault assumption, it is not going to give us the right solutions. The third question that is posed was about the balance between heart and head as a source of knowledge. So I think that there are different type of questions that are being posed by different sources, like the reason is one thing that is posed by, or that the head demands, mind demands, and the intuition or the peacefulness is the other kind of question being posed by the heart. So there should be a balance between the two. When we're going to deep into a reason without having a faith, then we may go astray. So we must have a strong faith, and then we can just support that faith with the reason. The reason, slowly, I think it is not going to help and answer our questions. So there must be a good balance between the two. Or maybe we can just say that we shall flow our questions or the answers to our questions, raising from heart to head. Okay, the last questions, let me just go through it very quickly, is about economic theory applies universally to all. So whether it is correct or wrong. So to us, I think it is a kind of a wrong intuition that economic theory applies universally to every country and every individual, and we can generalize it. Actually, we are not able to generalize it because there is for each country, if we just read or take it as a countrywide, each country has its own unique development experience. So what it means that each country has its own like nature of production. So people have different capabilities, like people in Pakistan does not have equal capabilities like in China, for instance. So the nature of employment jobs in Pakistan would be different like in other countries. Similarly, factors of production are different. So these everything are different in. So similarly, if we talk about the trade opportunities depend upon in which region we are. So we are going to trade with our neighbors first. So all the trade theory of or the theory of free trade is not going to help us if we are not going to see that with which country we are going to trade or what commodities we are going to trade. Similarly, there is another aspect of family system, like maybe Western countries, we are not happily or that our mothers are going to work and just to raise money and support us all the time. So there are different systems in across the countries that one development theory, one development theory or one kind of economic theory is not going to help all the countries, all the economies, we cannot generalize the economic theory for all the countries at once. So I think it's all from my side. So I hope I have not taken much time.
Yeah, that was very good. Next up is who is next? It's Maz. No, sorry, Maz was already presenting. Lisa. Lisa is you are presenting, and it may be that I will have to drop out and come back in because the electricity has gone and this computer I am on will lose internet. But I can join back in using my mobile, which will have an internet. So anyway, Lisa, are you there?
Yes, Prof, I'm here.
Can you do the presentation for your section now? Section C?
Yes.
Okay, so please go ahead and start. And I will
Okay.
try to also join in from the other computer.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So maybe before going through the question and answer, I would like to share the in a glance, the summary of this section. So actually, in this section, Professor Zaman shared with us about the reflection that he found the contradiction between the Islamic teaching and the economics, and he found that actually this happened due to the related to the historical loss of faith. I mean that if is it possible to happen because many people in the past they face this one, the loss of faith, and this bring consequences to the trauma, loss of faith, and then the development of the economics measure of economic, which is based on the rejection of the unobservable and based on the secular foundation. So Professor mentioned that this condition make the existing economic being unable to identify the hidden reality. So that is a glance about the topic. The full article, of course, can be accessed. And now I would like to share the points of our discussion. Hopefully the screen can be seen by everyone. So there are 4 questions. The first is regarding to the examples of the bodies of knowledge which have been shaped by historical events. So according to discussion in our groups, we see that social science, especially the economics, and as also elaborated previously in the articles, that the loss of faith has consequences to the mindset on how the doctrine that we are being taught in economics about the capitalist mindset and the materialistic, we being taught that it is it's so a person to need to be rational so that he or she unconsciously being self-centric. And the second things that we found is regarding to the establishment of the nation state, that it is bring the legitimacy to the state. So there are in many cases that the rules of the state give the enforcement for all the society. The second, regarding to the example of our daily activities, whereby the whole Homo economicus model in the economics theories is not lined. One that we maybe most of us also have ever experienced about this thing is about the experience in spending the money for charity. See, so from economic perspective, it is not rational to spend our money for something that do not directly benefit us. But from our Islamic teaching, we believe that this is not decreased our wealth, and so the experience of the pleasure and happiness and the feeling when we can help other people, this is the things that is not cannot be measured by the material things. And the second is the experience of supporting other people to grow professionally. So if we see from the economic rational perspective, maybe it is like kind of giving our job to others, but because in our teaching, risk is already secured, and it will not be replaced by others. So we believe that our risk will not be taken by other people. So it is no problem to supporting other people to grow professionally. The third is regarding to the trauma of loss of faith affect the development of the theories. So we noted that this trauma loss of faith have the consequences on the limitation of the knowledge development, that it is focused on the things that is the observable, but the issue, there are many things that is not cannot be directly seen. So the concept of barokah. So and it is also really matters because the loss of faith here also having on consequences on the human behavior in making choice. So with the loss of faith, we tend to be exposed to maximize our own pleasure, so that it is having consequences on the behavior of our spending. And the last question regarding to the some of the harm of the rejection of the observables is about the main points about the quality of the human development, because of the focus on the things that can be observed. People tend to see the things that can be materially observed and measured. So, but we notice that the most important is regarding to the human quality of the human and the morals, and it is sometimes cannot be seen in the direct way with our eyes. I think that's all from our teams. Thank you.
All right. So good. I've joined again from another from my mobile, and the next group which will be presenting is section D. Amna, are you there? Waqar, Amna? Can you hear me? Hello, can everybody hear me? Yes, Amna. Can we unmute Amna and give her? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam. Can you do the presentation for your side?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good.
I hope my screen is now visible to all.
Yes, I can see it.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm here to discuss the section D of this chapter and the related questions from it. In the previous section, we have discussed from section C, we have discussed that all the economic theories were developed to serve the interest of powerful and wealthy countries. These are based on the distorted history, which was just to project the superiority of the West and the inferiority of the East. Reading these histories will creates the inferiority complex in our students. Moreover, these modern economic histories are cloaked in mathematical languages, and they contain stark conflict with Islam and economics. This all have led to the concept of logical positivism, which is in detail discussed in section D. The main discussion of section D is about the logical positivism, which is a toxic philosophy which forms the foundations of the Western education. The main areas discussed in section D are what is basically the logical positivism, what is wrong with this philosophy, why does it appear to be extremely plausible even though it is obviously false, and how can an obviously false philosophy become widely popular and deeply influence thought and action worldwide. Reading up these pages have led us to know that this philosophy says that all the knowledge that we have comes from our senses and logic. It denies the value of tradition and faith as source of knowledge. Any traditional knowledge or Quranic teaching must be tested empirically, and it must accord with our observations and logic if it is to be counted as knowledge. The logical positivism has very disturbing implications as all the non-observable areas are just discarded from the level to be counted as knowledge, including morality, which is just a meaningless noise. We cannot evaluate using any observations or logic. Similarly, emotions are not part of knowledge. Thus, our feelings of outrage, anger, disgust, or any other act are just not the part of knowledge. Hence, our life experiences and skills are also not part of knowledge. This radical change in the theory of knowledge, which took place in earlier 20th century, created a radical change in university education designed to convey knowledge. Changes in the theory of knowledge are created by as created by logical positivism, combined with other forces, led to a purely technical education system, and it also led to abandonment of character building as a goal of education, and this has caused huge or great damage globally. Now let's focus to the discussion of the questions related to this section. Question number 1 was, what kind of knowledge is rejected by logical positivism? What kind is accepted? Basically, as we have noted earlier, that logical positivist theory of knowledge states that knowledge must be built on what we can only see and touch, supplemented by the use of reasons. The philosophy of logical positivism is founded on rejection of beliefs in the unseen as superstition. This rejection of intuition and feelings and of heart as a source of knowledge corresponds to a deliberate self-infliction of blindness to central source of human cognition. Hence, logical positivism rejects the knowledge that is not observable and that cannot be perceived by the 5 senses, and it only focuses on observable visible knowledge and does not consider if there is any hidden knowledge that the 5 senses cannot perceive. Question number 2 is, why is logical positivism obviously false? What kind of knowledge do we have that is not based on observations and logic? The philosophy of logical positivism is false because to reach the facts or to be counted as knowledge, it only focuses on observables, which is far from truth as the real world consists of several observable as well as non-observable things and facts which can be perceived by heart, intuition, or experiences, etc. As noted by the Hadith Qudsi, that the heavens and earth could not encompass me, but the heart of my tender believing servant did. This is the hidden knowledge. We may reach out to the unobservable facts using observable ones. Like morality is just meaningless, as we have discussed. Emotions, human feelings, experiences, and skills. These all are just not the part of knowledge under logical positivism. So, excluding this all from the group of knowledge makes us to skip behind or leave some facts. So, making the logical positivism obviously false to be as the used as only basis for knowledge. How does the demand for certainty rules out most of the knowledge that we use in our daily life? As under logical positivism, science is considered to be the study of external reality. If taken to be the sole source of valid knowledge, then the only knowledge which matter is that is that of the world around us. But the knowledge from our internal world, as discussed in earlier slides as well, the world of our heart and spirits are not part of science under logical positivism. To accept logical positivism is to accept that our internal states, feeling, intuitions, experiences, knowledge that our heart have been imprinted with are not part of the genuine knowledge. There should not be any doubt about obtaining the knowledge. If there is any doubt, then mainly the knowledge gained by using the doubtful ones will cause continuation in having doubtful knowledges, which further distorts the truth and hinders the reaching reality. And this is all just creating the artificial facts. Lastly, what historical events in Europe led to the widespread acceptance of this deeply flawed theory of knowledge in the earlier 20th century? This question has been very detailed, discussed in the section C, and it has been referred under the book by Edward Said that our knowledge has been strongly shaped by European domination of the globe. European conquest and colonization of 90% of globe during earlier 20th century has led to a view of history which focuses on the power and glory of the West and displays all other as ignorant barbarians. Racist theory of superiority of whites and inferiority of other nations have invented to create justification of colonizations. These are widespread throughout the world as part and parcel of the Western education, and which now dominates across the educational system. The bloody battles between Christian factions led to Europeans to reject their religious facts, and they adopted a purely materialistic worldview. They adopted the purest of pleasure, power, and profit as the purpose of life and developed the knowledge to help achieve these materialistic goals only. The examples are the economic theories, which have been developed just to serve the purpose. So, although science and religion were not in conflicting areas till the end of 1800s, but the view changed during the earlier 20th century. The main reason was the superiority belief of Europeans over other nations, and they revised the concepts of science accordingly to their wishes and whims, and this superiority directed them to exploit the majority of the world to make them to be their servants, not of Allah, and to gain power, profit, and knowledge. The few main events which caused the current thinking of knowledge were the large Western barbarian conquers or warfares, and the struggle between the science and religion across 2 centuries, and the loss of faith in Christianity. So this is all about the section 4 up to understanding.
Very good, Amna. I have a few comments about the certainty, but I think what I will do is write it up because, but everything else was fine. And so I think the last section now is Tasir Salahuddin. Then administration give co-host privilege to Tasir Salahuddin. Tasir, can you raise your hand so that we can track you down and give you the presentation? Oh, good. Okay, Tasir, go ahead and do your presentation of the last section.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Assalamu alaikum, sir. I'm going to share my slides and then I'm going to start. Sir, my slides are visible to everybody. Should I start?
I don't see them on my screen. Can you, admin, can you make sure that your slide sharing is working? Do you have the slide share button?
Just a minute, sir. I think this is the first time actually I'm presenting via mobile phone. So I don't have any idea if my slides are visible.
I see. On the phone, it's, can you present your slides? I don't know. I've never done it on the phone either. Usually the slides are handled by the PowerPoint. And if you have a PowerPoint, please.
Slide. And then.
Actually, for a presentation on phone, you should convert this to Google Slides. Then the Google can handle it.
I'm sorry, I have no idea how to do that. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I'll have to download them.
Can you just discuss it without slides?
Okay.
You don't have them on some other
I'm really very sorry that they are not here in front of you people, but I'm going to start discussing the main points. Actually, I had prepared, I would have started with the introduction of the group members, but let's skip that and go exactly to the brief summary of the fifth section, or the section E of this exercise. It covers the implications of the logical positivism for statistics, and it starts with the concept that people think that philosophy is a mere following or exploration of idle ideas, but that is not what it is, because philosophy is really important. The way you think is the way you act. And then it is discussed by Dr. Asad Zaman that European history, as has been discussed by group C and D previously, impacted the creation or the birth of the logical positivism, and it actually gave the birth of epistemic arrogance, with the idea that it is possible to have certain knowledge. Whereas in contrast, Islam teaches us epistemic humility, where we think that mankind has been given very little knowledge and the actual knowledge belongs to the Almighty. So if we move on with the idea of epistemic humility, then we have to reject the positivism, where you are trying to believe in everything that you can ascertain with your senses. So the major impacts of logical positivism on economics that have been discussed here are, again, that we have to reject heart and focus on mind, and we have to work with the assumption of rationality, that human beings are rational and they are able to make best decisions in their selfish interests. And that has actually taken away the motivation of all the activities of all economic activities that were based on kindness and sharing and cooperation and taking care of each other, because that doesn't fall into the logical positivist rational idea. So the motivation for economic activity that has only remained is the pursuance of personal pleasures and satisfaction. And change of the goal of economic activity has taken away the spirit of humanity out of economics. And the impacts of statistics that have been discussed are that normalist point of view has taken importance over the realist point of view, and we are only talking about numbers and looking at the data but not connecting it to the real life experiences and the real life values in human life. So there are certain fallacies that have been created by the positivism, and the three of them that have been discussed here are the forecast competition, where the abstract and subjective competitions are done on the basis of algorithms and on different series, and it is tried to see if which one is the best predictor. Similarly, we believe that if the data gets big and we start learning from the machines, we are start using machines, maybe we'll be able to predict better, but that is not true. Similarly, another fallacy is the imitation game. No matter how many times, how well you train the machines and try to compare it with the humans, and maybe a machine may win a certain competitions, even that doesn't make that machine a human. And it's absurd to compare a limited programmed machines to human beings who have capacity far beyond that can ever be contained in a machine. So this was the brief summary, and I would move on to the questions now. So the first question was that the term real statistics captures the idea that statistics uses observations and quantification to learn about the hidden real world entities and forces. This is opposed to the conventional statistics based on logical positivism, which uses numbers to study the numbers in isolation from the unobservable real world factors. So we were supposed to give an example of how these two approaches are different in the context of specific real world problem. Suppose that we have admission ratios biasness in a particular institutions, and we see that always the females are being having higher admission ratios in every department. So when we are taking the conventional statistics approach, it may only calculate the gender ratios of admitted population, and based only on numbers can say yes, there is biasness towards the females as compared to males in the admission process. However, if we take the real statistics approach and we dig deeper to see if the apparent biasness really exists and why this specific gender ratio exists, maybe the males in that area are being given better job opportunities, better admission opportunities somewhere else that females actually cannot attain. So they go international, the men go international, and the admission ratios in a particular area falls, but the females are stuck there, so their percentage is higher. That doesn't mean that by looking at the real life situation of that particular area, we will only be able to answer such questions and not only based on the numbers. So question number 2 is, given a series from x1 to x100, linear trend and autoregressive are two different methods for forecasting. So the linear trend method assumes the differences are stable across time and uses this as the basis of forecasting. We take that average of the past differences and make and use it for the forecasting. Instead, suppose one can assume that the rate of growth is stable and take the average of rate of growths, then our forecast would be different. It would be based on the averages and not on the basis of the differences. So the question was, which of these two methods is better? And we were supposed to decide on the basis of answering by picking 100 data series and using the two methods and see if which one gives better results. So we had to explain how to choose the data series in a way that make either one of them better. So the answer to this is that in method 1, will be useful. It depends on the situation. No method, comparing method 1 or 2 just on the basis of numbers is not possible, or giving a direct answer. So if method 1 is being used where differences are required, for example, if we want to see how much a new fertilizer has impacted the growth of a particular wheat variety, then maybe method 1 is good. And when we are trying to use the rate of growth to analyze something, and we want to compare the impact of 2 different fertilizers on the same variety of the wheat, maybe method 2 is going to be better. So that is our response. Question number 3 is that suppose we were in the judge in the imitation game or the Turing test. We have to type in questions and receive responses from 2 sources, A and B, out of which one is the real human being and the other is a computer. So what kind of questions we should have asked to understand and lead to a quick decision? Our response was that we would ask questions based on emotions and in human expressions and core values like compassion, understanding, love, dignity, sacrifice. And many a times when we are talking about human understandings on the basis of life experiences, humans have a lot of figurative meanings attached to a particular sentence or data that a machine cannot analyze. For example, if we are trying to understand the poetry of Ghalib, probably we would not be able to, a machine is not going to understand the way a human is going to. Similarly, question number 4 says, explain why big data or machine data learning would not have been able to forecast the global financial crisis of 2007 and 8. The response to this question is that basically the experience, even if the big data was there or machine learning was there, on the basis of the model that were being used, and if the past history and experience was not there, the machine would not be able to predict or predict the existence of this sort of financial crisis, because the model that we have fed to the machine is only going to be limited to the responses on that. So it is not the amount of data or advanced machines which can judge the real life impacts of policies. After all, humans feed the models to the machines, and if models of humans understanding are flawed, no machine or big data can help predict. And secondly, human knowledge, no matter how advanced, it is still fallible. So correct prediction is not a possibility as a fact. Thank you.
All right, so we have covered all 5 sections. This has been 90 minutes. I think this will be our usual lecture length, and this is the process. I have some comments which I will actually make in public to the group. Now, basically, this was chapter 0, which is not technically part of the book. So chapter 1, we will start next lecture, which will be 2 weeks from today on Sunday, and the course will be open for I think 1 more week, and then we will start close down the registration and work with the students who have registered until then. So one of the things I would like to ask you is make sure I have a desired audience. As I said, this is for master trainers, for teachers of statistics. So I would like to ask all of you to invite teachers of statistics to take this course. I'm not really so much interested in students, because I need to have a geometric effect. And so if I have a teacher, then he or she can teach many other students. In terms of the last question that you just answered, Tasir, the issue is not so much about models that we use. And the issue is that the data, the methods of data analysis look at the data to see what pattern is there. So if the global financial crisis never occurred, nothing like that occurred for the past, until basically it's the biggest event since the Great Depression. If you look at the past 30 years of data, there is not a single, it is never going to show you that, because it never happened in the past. And all of the data analysis technique looks at the past to predict the future. So if something never happened in the past, then any data analysis will say if something is impossible in the past, it is also impossible in the future. So because global financial crisis was a unique event, which nothing like that is in the past of the data, then no method can actually predict it, which is based on data analysis alone. Now, if you go behind the data to the real world factors, then it becomes possible to predict, but not on the basis of data alone. So that's just one comment. So, okay, so basically that's it for today, inshallah. We don't really have time for question and answer because the time is all up. Next time we will try to find some way to keep the time limit so that other students in the audience can also participate. But basically one of the means is that students will be formed into groups and they will communicate with the group leaders, so we can actually have by this two-stage method, we can have everybody in communication with me, and of course everybody can write to me directly if there is a question. All right, thank you everybody. Inshallah, this has been very fruitful lecture and inshallah a good learning experience for everybody, and I hope to see you all next in 2 weeks on Sunday. All right, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We can finish this session now.